To palpate the brachialis, the forearm of the patient should be in pronated position. Then the palpating hand is at the forearm below the biceps brachii. Then ask the patient to flex the elbow, then extend. The contracting muscle is the brachialis muscle. So the biceps brachii can be palpated at the cubital fossa at the elbow. Then the position of the forearm of the patient is in supine position. Then the elbow is flexed. Then the PT will resist the flexion of the elbow. So ma'am, can you bend your elbow and match my resistance? So, and here you'll be able to palpate the tendon of the biceps brachii. To palpate the brachioradialis, the forearm of the patient is in mid position and the elbow is flexed. Then the palpating hand is above the elbow. Then ask the patient to flex and supinate the forearm. So ma'am, can you please bend your elbow and point your palm upward. Don't let me rotate your forearm. So kindly do it now. So the muscle can also be seen visually and can also be palpated in this manner.
To palpate the pronator teres, have the palpating fingers at the medial epicondyle and at the medial part of the coronoid process of the ulna while resisting pronation of the forearm and flexion of the elbow. So ma'am, please bend your elbow and face your palm downward. I will resist it to match my resistance. So you will feel the contraction of the pronator teres muscle. And then going radially to the midway of the forearm in the radial side, have your patient relax her arm and then have her pronate slowly. So ma'am, face your palm downward slowly. You would feel the contraction of the pronator teres while having the brachioradialis muscle in relaxation, so it would not contract. To palpate the triceps brachii, first we have to palpate the long head of the biceps. Palpating the long head is at the lowest fibers of the posterior deltoid, here. And then you would go halfway in the middle of the arm, and then the lateral head would be at the distal of the posterior fibers of the deltoid. So it would be here. And then having your patient's dorsum of the wrist of the hand at the edge of the table, we will now locate the medial head of the triceps. Having palpating your palpating fingers at the tendon near the medial epicondyle. And then ask your patient to extend the arm. Sir, please straighten your arm. And then you would feel the contraction of the three heads of the triceps brachii. Next is we will palpate the anconeus. To palpate the anconeus, we will find first the lateral epicondyle and then put the other finger on the olecranon process and then the other finger on the posterior surface. So we will make a triangle here. And then ask the patient to straighten his elbow. So sir, straighten your elbow. And then as the patient straightens the elbow, you will feel a contraction on the posterior surface here. So that contraction will be the anconeus.
To palpate the supinator muscle, the forearm of the patient must be at the lap of the PT, and then one hand would be holding on to the forearm, with the forearm pronated, and then pulling the radial muscles as far away as possible. The palpating fingers would be placed proximal to the forearm, close to the radius. And then, have the patient supinate slowly. So, ma'am, have your palm facing upward, slowly. And then the contracting muscle would be the supinator. Despite being a deep muscle, the supinator can be palpated at this point.
Pronator quadratus. This muscle is non-palpable because this muscle is covered by the tendons of the wrist and the fingers.
Hinahanap ko sa kapit.
To palpate the extensor carpi radialis longus, first locate the capitate bone, which is the keystone of your palm, and then going radially, and then finding the radial tubercle, which is at the proximal of the forearm. Medial to the radial tubercle is where the extensor carpi radialis longus would pass from the lateral epicondyle. And then have your patient make a fist and then extend the wrist. Ma'am, relax. Okay, extend the wrist. The muscle felt contracting would be the extensor carpi radialis longus. For the extensor carpi radialis brevis, have your patient open her palm and then have her thumb go pointing upward. Ma'am, have your thumb pointing upward. No. Your forearm would be in the mid position. Have your thumb in pointing upward. This tendon next to the extensor pollicis longus would be the tendon of the abductor pollicis longus and the extensor carpi radialis brevis. Medial to the abductor pollicis longus would be the extensor carpi radialis brevis. So here, the medial side.
Palmaris longus. To palpate the palmaris longus tendon, the patient is asked to touch the tip of the thumb and the little finger and flex the wrist. The prominent tendon at the medial side of the wrist is the palmaris longus tendon.
Radialis. So, to palpate the flexor carpi radialis, ask the patient to bend her hand. And then, reach your little finger using your thumb. So, the prominent tendon here is the palmaris longus, and then move laterally to palpate the flexor carpi radialis. So here's the flexor carpi radialis.
Ulnaris. The flexor carpi ulnaris tendon can be palpated between the pisiform bone and the ulnar styloid process. The motion should be ulnar deviation and flexion of the hand. So, ma'am, can you move your hands going to the side of your little finger and then bend it upwards?
So to palpate the extensor digitorum, we will palpate it between the carpal bones and the metacarpophalangeal joints. So it's here. So ask the patient to move the fingers upward. So the prominent four tendons here is the extensor digitorum. To palpate the extensor indicis, the PT must first palpate the extensor digitorum, which was shown earlier. Immediately adjacent to the extensor digitorum tendons is the extensor indicis. You will find the tendon when you ask the patient to bend and extend the index finger. So, ma'am, please bend and then extend your index finger. Go. And this tendon that is moving, which is immediately adjacent to the extensor digitorum, is the extensor indicis tendon. To palpate the extensor digiti minimi muscle, you have to ask your patient to push down towards the table so that the extensor digitorum muscle won't extend the fingers. And then your palpating fingers should be placed at the distal part of your ulnar styloid process. And then have your patient extend the little finger. So, ma'am, can you straighten your little finger? The tendon that is being palpated while doing this action is the extensor digiti minimi tendon. Palpate the flexor digitorum superficialis. Have your patient make a fist and then have her bend her wrist. So, ma'am, I would ask you to bend your wrist and I would give resistance. So, please match it. Okay, ma'am, go bend your wrist. So the tendon in between the palmaris longus and the flexor carpi ulnaris would be the tendon of the flexor digitorum superficialis. The tendon would be here.
Flexor digitorum profundus. This muscle is deep and difficult to palpate. PIP is stabilized with a palpating finger on the distal aspect of the middle phalanx. The FTP may be palpated as the distal phalanx is actively flexed. So, ma'am, I want you to flex your fingers. The palpated tendon is the flexor digitorum profundus. Palpate for the extensor pollicis longus. Have your patient's thumb actively extend. So, ma'am, I would like you to bend your thumb away from the rest of your fingers. So you can see here, this is the extensor pollicis longus tendon, and to just little to the side is the extensor pollicis brevis tendon.
To palpate the sartorius, gracilis, and semitendinosus, which are inserted close to each other, the patient is in short sitting position. The knee, the leg of the PT would be in front of the leg of the patient to provide resistance during knee extension. And the palpating fingers would be at the posteromedial side of the tibia. And then have your patient extend the knee. Sir, please straighten your knee. The contracting muscles would be the gracilis, sartorius, and the semitendinosus. The semitendinosus would be at the posterior inferior side. The gracilis would be the anterior, would be at the superior of the semitendinosus, and the sartorius would be next to them, which is harder to palpate than the two tendons. To palpate the semitendinosus muscle, the patient would be lying in prone, and then the palpating finger would be at the posteromedial side or at the folds of the knee. And then the patient would be asked to bend the knee and then match the resistance given by the patient. Okay, ma'am, so please bend your knee and I would give you a resistance. Please match my resistance. Okay, ma'am, bend your knee. And then the tendon that is felt at the folds of the knee would be semitendinosus muscle. The semimembranosus muscle is just below, okay ma'am, relax, is just below the semitendinosus and can be felt with the same action with knee flexion and with resistance, and then the semimembranosus would be felt at the lateral and medial sides of the semitendinosus. Okay ma'am, could you please bend your knee and match my resistance? Okay, so if this is the tendon of semitendinosus, you would just go at the medial and the lateral side and you can feel the contraction of the semimembranosus muscle. Okay, so we will palpate the tensor fasciae latae. So first, find the hip joint and then ask the patient to move her hip forward. So ma'am, move your hip forward and then move your legs away from your body. And then turn your knees inside. And then the palpating muscle here will be the tensor fasciae latae.
So the vastus lateralis can be palpated from its origin to its insertion, which is from the greater trochanter to the patella, which is here. Then ask the patient to extend her knee. Ma'am, please extend your knee. So we'll be able to palpate a contracting muscle at the lateral border of the femur.
To palpate the vastus mentalis, the patient is asked to extend the knee. The vastus mentalis is quite bulky at the medial side and is palpated at the lower third of the distal thigh. Vastus internicius. To palpate the vastus internicius, the patient is asked to extend the knee. The rectus femoris is crushed and lifted, and the vastus intermedius can be palpated underneath by palpating it medially or laterally.
Next, we will palpate the biceps tendon. So to palpate the biceps tendon, the patient is on sitting position, and then we will palpate the head of fibula. And then we will ask the patient to move his foot outside. So, sir, move your foot outside. And then the contraction will be felt on the head of fibula.
For the gastrocnemius, you'll just have to make your patient do tiptoeing. So, sir, I want you to do tiptoeing. And then, as you can see here, the heads of the gastrocnemius contracts. This is the medial head and this is the lateral head. This is the gastrocnemius muscle.
To palpate the rectus femoris, it is placed in between its origin and insertion, which is the axis and the patella. By asking the patient to extend the hip, then while the PT will resist the extension of the knee. And you'll be able to palpate here the rectus femoris muscle.
To palpate the abductor pollicis brevis, your palpating finger should be placed at the anterolateral portion of the first metacarpal. And then have your patient actively abduct the finger. So, sir, please move your thumb away from your fingers. The muscle felt contracting would be the abductor pollicis brevis.
Opponent's pollicis is beneath the two muscle, which is the flexor pollicis brevis and abductor pollicis brevis, which is right here. And that muscle is very hard to palpate.
The flexor pollicis brevis. So it lies over the opponent's pollicis, and it can be palpated when you move the thumb or flex it over the little finger in slight movement. So ask the patient to move. So sir, can you move your thumb slightly into the little finger? So the contraction that you will feel is the flexor pollicis brevis.
To palpate the abductor digiti minimi, you'll place your palpating finger at the medial of the fifth metacarpal bone, then ask the patient to move her fingers away from the other fingers. So ma'am, move your little finger towards the other side. Then you'll be able to feel a light movement at the medial side of the hand. Flexor digiti minimi can be palpated lateral to the hypotenar eminence, which is here. Then, by resisting the flexion of the little finger, you'll be able to palpate the said muscle. So ma'am, kindly flex your little finger. So you'll be able to feel a contraction at the lateral of the hypotenar eminence.
To palpate the opponent's digiti minimi, have your palpating fingers first palpate the abductor digiti minimi, and then just medial to it is the opponent's digiti minimi, and then have your patient touch the tip of the thumb to the tip of the little finger. So it would contract. That would be the opponent's digiti minimi.
Palpate the adductor pollicis. So it is not the thinner muscle. And then, to palpate it, it is located in the first web space. So you will ask the patient to move his thumb towards the other fingers in slight resistance. So sir, kindly move your thumb towards the other fingers. So here, the contraction that you will feel here is the adductor pollicis.
Lumbricals, which is situated radial to the long flexor tendons. Have your palpating fingers radial to the long flexor tendons, and then have your patient bend the knuckles but keeping the fingers extended. So you would feel a contracting muscle that would be the lumbricals. Despite it being palpable, it is a very difficult muscle to palpate. So to palpate the interossi, the first interossi would be palpated at the web space between the thumb and the forefinger, the muscular portion, and then having the second finger abduct with resistance. Okay, ma'am, so have your forefinger away from your middle finger while I give resistance. So match my resistance, ma'am. So it would contract here at the web space. And then for the second to fourth interossi, using a rubber band to give resistance, have your patient abduct and adduct the fingers, and then your palpating fingers would be in between the metacarpal bones. Okay, ma'am, so please move your fingers away and back towards the original position. It would be palpated but is very difficult to palpate.
Olecranon process. Flex the elbow of the patient, and at the proximal end of the ulna is the olecranon process. Mesial epicondyle. To palpate the mesial epicondyle of the humerus, you must first flex the elbow of the patient, and this short mesial bony structure at the distal end of the mesial side of the humerus is the mesial epicondyle of humerus. Mesial supracondylar line of humerus. With the elbow extended, move slightly upward from the mesial epicondyle of the humerus, and palpating this short bony ridge at the humerus is the mesial supracondylar line of humerus.
To palpate the ulnar border, have the patient's arm in abduction, and then from the olecranon process, going down relatively in a straight line towards the ulnar styloid process is the ulnar border, and then going back to the olecranon process.
Olecranon fossa. At the distal side of the posterior aspect of the humerus is the olecranon fossa, which receives the olecranon during elbow extension. Lateral epicondyle of humerus. Lateral to the olecranon process is the lateral epicondyle of humerus. Lateral supracondylar line of humerus. Palpating upward from the lateral epicondyle of the humerus is the lateral supracondylar line of humerus.
To palpate the radial head, have your patient in abduction and 90 degrees flexion, and then relocate the lateral epicondyle of the humerus, which is located here, and then move 1 inch distal from the lateral epicondyle. And then the depression that would be palpated would be where your radial head is located. And then have your patient supinate and pronate the forearm, and you would feel the movement of the radial head. So ma'am, could you please turn your palm upward? And then ma'am, turn it back. And the movement would be felt is the movement of the radial head while doing supination and pronation. To palpate the radial styloid process, the palpating fingers would be at the most lateral and distal end of the forearm. So you would feel it here and then note a groove on the radial styloid process. And then you would go down along the length of the radial styloid process until the going to the shaft of the radius until you feel the subcutaneous tissues lying, and then going back to the radial styloid, to the prominence at the distal end would be the radial styloid process.
We will palpate the anatomic snuff box. So after locating the radial styloid process, immediately distal from it is the anatomic snuff box. So ask the patient to move her thumb away from her finger. So ma'am, move your thumb away from your finger, and then just move up, and then you will see the anatomic snuff box, which is here.
Scaphoid or navicular bone. Have the patient rest in ulnar deviation and thumb in abducted position. The floor of the anatomic snuff box is the navicular bone or the scaphoid bone.
Trapezium. The trapezium is located on the radial side of the carpus, where it articulates with the first metacarpal. It is located distally from the anatomic snuff box, which is here. And then it is more easily palpable if you flex or extend the thumb. So ma'am, I want you to move your thumb going to the base of the little finger, and then move it back again. That's the trapezium. Radial tubercle or Lister's tubercle. Lister's tubercle lies about 1/3 of the way across the dorsum of the wrist from the radial styloid process. And it is like a small longitudinal bony prominence or nodule. Just distal from the Lister's tubercle is the capitate. You just have to move distal from the Lister's tubercle, and you will feel the base of the third metacarpal, and then you will feel a depression, and that is the capitate. But if you ask your patient to flex or bend her wrist, you will feel that the depression will become full, and that is also where the capitate is palpable.
To palpate the lunate, it is located proximal to the capitate and distal from the Lister's tubercle or the tubercle of the radius. So from the Lister's tubercle, you go distal and then proximal from the capitate. And then have your patient flex and extend her wrist. So ma'am, please bend and extend your wrist. You would feel the movement of the lunate capitate articulation. They are both at the base of the third metacarpal bone. To palpate the ulnar styloid process, the patient is in anatomic position, and your palpating fingers would go posteriorly and medially at the distal aspect of the forearm. So this bony prominence would be the ulnar styloid process. To palpate the triquetrium, you have the patient would be in radial deviation, and it is distal from the ulnar styloid process. So first, ma'am, could you move your wrist towards the side of your thumb? And then putting your palpating fingers at the ulnar styloid process, go distally. And this is where the triquetrium would be.
So we will palpate the pisiform bone. So to palpate it, probe the anterolateral region of the triquetrium. So you will feel a sesamoid bone here. So the pisiform is formed within the flexor carpi ulnaris tendon.
Palpating the hook of hamate, the interphalangeal joint of the PT would be placed at the pisiform bone, and then the tip of the thumb would be pointing between the thumb and the forefinger. So the tip of the thumb would be the hook of hamate would be directly under the tip of the thumb of the PT. So you would press deeply because it is under soft tissues, which makes it harder to palpate. So this is the hook of hamate.
So, to palpate the metacarpals, you'll just have to find the basis of all the metacarpals, starting from the second up to the fifth metacarpals. So, for example, you'll start from the base of the second metacarpal, going to its full length near the knuckles. Same goes with the third, the fourth, and the fifth metacarpals. First metacarpal bone. The first metacarpal bone is from the anatomic snuff box up to the metacarpophalangeal joints. So from here to here, this is the metacarpophalangeal joint. So note that it is shorter and broader than the other metacarpals.
So the metacarpophalangeal joint can be palpated distally from the metacarpal bones. So by flexing the fingers of the patient, you'll be able to see the bony prominences, which is the metacarpophalangeal joints. So the phalanges can be palpated distally from the knuckles. So these are the phalanges of every finger. So this is the proximal phalanx, middle phalanx, and distal phalanx.
To palpate the medial tibial plateau, push your thumb inferiorly into the soft tissue depression until you can feel the sharp upper edge of the medial tibial plateau. The upper non-articulating edge of the plateau is palpable posteriorly to the junction of the tibial plateau and the femoral condyle, and anteriorly to the infrapatellar tendon. The plateau itself serves as one point of attachment for the medial meniscus.
Palpate the medial femoral condyle from the patella, immediately move medially to it, and then the bony prominence here is the medial femoral condyle.
To palpate the adductor tubercle, first you need to find the medial femoral condyle. Then, posteriorly to it is the adductor tubercle, which is a depression on the femur.
Lateral tubercle. So to palpate it, first, using your thumb, find the depression, which is the tibial plateau. And then, inferior to it, you will find a bony prominence, which is the lateral tubercle. So we will palpate the lateral femoral condyle. So it lies inferior and lateral to the patella. So it is the depression here. That's the lateral femoral condyle. And then just move laterally to it. We'll palpate the lateral femoral epicondyle. So the bony prominence here is the lateral femoral epicondyle. Palpate the fibular head. So to palpate it, from the lateral epicondyle, we will move inferiorly and posteriorly. So the prominent bone here is the fibular head. It is situated about the same level of the tibial tubercle.
For the trochlear groove, you'll just have to find the medial and lateral joint lines. Then, you'll move upwards and then you will feel a depression here. This is the trochlear groove. And then for the patella is situated over the trochlear groove and it is fixed during flexion of the knee. And then, it is mobile during extension of the knee. And it is more mobile if you move it medially than laterally.
Olecranon process. Flex the elbow of the patient and at the Proximal end of the ulna is the olecranon process. Mesial epicondyle. To palpate the mesial epicondyle of the humerus, you must first flex the elbow of the patient, and this short mesial bony structure at the distal end of the mesial side of the humerus is the mesial epicondyle of humerus. Mesial supracondylar line of humerus. With the elbow extended, move slightly upward from the mesial epicondyle of the humerus, and palpating this short bony ridge at the humerus is the mesial supracondylar line of humerus.
To palpate the ulnar border, have the patient's arm in abduction, and then from the olecranon process, going down relatively in a straight line towards the ulnar styloid process is the ulnar border, and then going back to the olecranon process.
Olecranon fossa. At the distal side of the posterior aspect of the humerus is the olecranon fossa, which receives the olecranon during elbow extension. Lateral epicondyle of humerus. Lateral to the olecranon process is the lateral epicondyle of humerus. Lateral supracondylar line of humerus. Palpating upward from the lateral epicondyle of the humerus is the lateral supracondylar line of humerus.